What's up, folks? This is Dan from Discern, and these are my thoughts on the new album from For All Seasons Live Sessions Volume 2. For All Seasons is a worship band from Southern California. They've been releasing music since their debut album, High Above It All, in 2013. They gained most of their notoriety from their self-titled album in 2014, and ever since then they have been releasing some live EPs titled Live Sessions. These are live in that they aren't concert or corporate worship settings, but they are performed in single takes, or at least that's the impression from the string of videos released with the EPs. Their first EP was released last year and featured a mix of new songs and new recordings of previously released tracks. And this EP that we have before us today, released just a week ago, is structured in very much the same way. So far, though, there has been only one live video released in connection with this EP so far, a video for the song Bigger Than. And now this visual component of these songs, the live videos they release to YouTube, really kind of come across as sort of the main goal behind this project. It sort of feels like the goal wasn't necessarily to make a musically and lyrically independent album, a solid album with no frills that can stand on its own, but was to make, an inspiring, authentic, and high-quality set of single-take live worship videos, which has become really the modus operandi for worship groups in the last few years, releasing videos like this. Everything about, the production, from the room they're in to the post effects or the equipment, it's all very, very clean, very precise, very safe. It's ordinary. It's sort of playing the role of a worship group. So, with the album out of its intended context, out from underneath the banner of this beautifully produced live video, it feels exposed, a little lacking. It doesn't have, I think, the musical and lyrical meat that would give the album legs to stand on. I think the videos, which, like I said, currently there's only one, but I anticipate there will be more released, I feel like they're kind of a crutch to the music. They certainly do make the final product more fantastic, more entertaining, more emotional, but those characteristics fade away without that visual component. And before I get into the specifics of the EP, I want you to understand something that I think encapsulates the feelings that I have about this album. It seems to me that in the way that they made this album and in the album itself, so in other words, both in the practice and in the product, performance is greater than substance. It seems like more thought and energy was spent on the production of the album rather than the writing, the substance. So keep that in mind, I guess. It may help you understand why I feel the way I do about this album. Getting into the specifics of the EP, starting with the melodies and the lyrics, between those two facets, I can't tell what was more easily forgettable and unmemorable. Let's start with the melodies. As an example, the album opens up with the song Salvation's Melody, a song that I think is actually lacking in a good, strong melody. The heavily compressed arena worship sound is pretty heavy-handed and bloated, I guess, lacking in melodic flexibility and richness. It's just slamming the chords, loudly, chords with a very basic, ordinary structure and arrangement, just pounding the drums with a very straight four-on-the-floor feel. And the guitar melody that carries the hook is just too dull and uninteresting for a song called Salvation's Melody. It's just a three-note descending line repeated a few times. No flair, no charisma. It's just not a memorable melody. And on the lyrical front in this EP, far too many of the lyrics are just forgettable cliche after forgettable cliche. Here's some examples going track by track. Let's see. These are some of the first cliches I heard in these tracks. We've got calling us from the ashes, through the fire, Your praise will ever be on my lips. Seek your face, I long for you. You bring light to the darkness. Won't let me go. It's not that these phrases aren't true. It's not that they aren't biblical. In fact, there are plenty of phrases pulled directly from verses. The problem is how absolutely overused and dime a dozen these phrases have become these days. As you're listening, your brain is thinking, I have heard this 1,000 times before. And I found it hard to pay attention, and follow the lyrics as they become just a string of Christianese and worship mantras. And look, even if they aren't all stock phrases, the themes and the topics of each song just end up blending together into a morass of indistinguishable worship songs. They're all just about God, about how good He is, about how much we praise Him, how much He loves us, how much we need Him. True, but they are big generalities. And this album paints with such a broad brush, just the most base, generic descriptions of Christian praise, painted in giant swaths. And you throw enough of them together, you drop it on top of a melody, you tie it up with a singular line that contains the title of the song, and that's it. There's the song, What's the thematic and lyrical factors that differentiate any of these songs from each other? They don't have enough lyrical focus to even warrant varying characteristics and descriptions amongst each other. It's hard to tell what these songs are about, other than God and worship, which are the lowest common denominators in music of this genre. So you may be thinking, do I have anything good to say about this album? Well, I do. The instruments are at least played with competency and without distracting errors, that's for sure. The production is clean and orderly. There's nothing sloppy about it, almost to a fault at times. The album plays it so safe and so careful that it doesn't have an edge. It doesn't have a spark to it. But of all the tracks, I thought Bigger Than was probably the best. I liked the cold, icy synth lead that functions sort of as an accent to the snare, giving it more breadth and sonic diversity to the sound of the drums. I think that song brought the most creativity to the table, at least musically, and I think that this song sort of typifies their sound more so than the other tracks. I also like the pacing of the album, up until the end, that is. The first track kicks things off with sort of a peak of energy on the EP, and from there each track sort of cascades down like a drawn-out decrescendo. I think the balance from track to track was pretty good. It led the listener through the music in a fairly structured and sensible way. But then we have the final track, a cover of Alive from Hillsong Young and Free. This song is the only track to contain some audience participation. In fact, I think it's the only track on here with an actual audience at all. The recording is also much sloppier. Not that it's terrible, it's just that, well, it's a departure from the spotless and streak-free approach to all the other tracks. There's also a moment midway through the track where the lead vocalist, the worship leader, expresses some noticeable disappointment when the crowd doesn't carry the pre-chorus with enough gusto, not hyped enough. When it's their turn to take the mic, in a sense, she lets out sort of a, come on, partially in jest, I think, but I don't know, I'm guessing partially not as well. It's just a peculiar moment to land on this EP on the final take. I don't know, it's just kind of odd. It's a short-lived moment for sure. It's there and gone, but it definitely made me chuckle, feel a bit puzzled, like, what was that? But anywho, back to my point. This track just sticks out like a sore thumb in the context of the rest of the album. I don't understand its location on the album, but it's closing out basically this gradual decline in dynamics with a dancey pop song. But I also don't understand, I guess, just why this track was on the record at all. What's the purpose behind putting this one on there? To me, it didn't bolster the album. It only detracted from it because, in a different context, this track would probably be better served, but this really did not feel like the proper context for that track. Big picture on this EP, I think For All Seasons actually accomplished what they set out to do. It looks like they were inspired by the contemporary worship music culture and wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to make their worship album, and I know this is not the first one they've made. And they created an EP that very neatly and smoothly blends into the contemporary worship music landscape. It settles in nicely amongst many other bands with a similar style, image, and sound. But I think they actually blended in so well that the problem is I can't distinguish them anymore. I can't pick them out of a lineup. They fit the mold so carefully that they're actually just another worship group, So I guess that's a success. I mean, you're a worship group? I don't know. The thing is, a few of the differences that set music apart in a sea of groups like Hillsong, Bethel Music, Elevation Worship, what sets them apart is the instrumentation and the tonal differences. Like, for example, the heavy EDM-inspired Hillsong Young and Free, or the tangible, energetic presence and vitality that some of these groups have. And some of these groups wield that so skillfully. Within those two facets, if you can't differentiate from the pack, it's going to be hard to say that you're really offering anything to the table. It makes that much easier to be drowned out when you sound like a whole host of other groups. Your sound just blends right in with the others. In closing, I don't want my negativity about this record to make you think it's unbearable. It's not like that at all. It's not that this album is offensive or egregious. It's just of such little consequence. This album is not offering enough to the conversation to move the needle more than just a slight nudge. I mean, there are a lot of groups out there right now that are creating music just like this, imitating this same model, vibing on these same wavelengths, and sadly, I can't think of a single characteristic about this EP that would set this music apart from the others. It's certainly not the arrangements, not the instrumentation, the lyrical styling, the performances, the production. Those elements, of this album are too nondescript. They're lacking in personality and flavor. They're too generic. They're just like the others in a sense. And look, I'm not too naive to think that this only happens in worship music. I know for a fact that this happens across the entire musical genre spectrum. But regardless of where it happens, I usually have the same feeling towards it, which is apathetic, disinterested, uninspired. I mean, music that fits the mold to a T is unremarkable by definition. And so while it's certainly not an obnoxious record, it's also certainly not worth a lot of my time or money, which is partially ironic because I spent hours on this review video. So anyway, for what it's worth, thank you for watching this album review. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel. New album reviews release every Friday, and new track reviews release every Wednesday. I got a real contentious one up right now, apparently. A lot of downvotes on that last track review, but hey, they're just opinions. You are free to voice yours as well. You're free to disagree. So if you have a question or a comment, an opinion you would like to voice about this album specifically, or not about this album, let me know. You can comment below this video. You could tweet at me at discernreviews. You could send me an email, discernreviews@gmail.com. Thanks again for watching. Hope you have a great day. Anyway, hope this helped. See ya.